White Supremacist My Ass. That's what I'm calling the video tonight. That's what I'm calling the video, folks, because as a white man living in the greatest country on this planet, I am sick and damn tired of being blamed for everything that's going wrong right now. Take the recent shooting in Colorado at this King's Cooper grocery store. They claim that the gunman is a white supremacist, but he's of Syrian descent. Now, how the hell can somebody of Syrian descent be a white supremacist? Well, he looks white. Pardon me if I'm wrong here, but don't you have to be white to be a white supremacist, as the name suggests? And we've had a recent spike in the number of COVID cases, especially in the minority community. Depending on white supremacy, then. If you lost your job in the last year, it's due to white supremacy. If you're upside down on your mortgage, on your home, blame it on white supremacy. It's as though white supremacy is somehow this mysterious, all-knowing, all-seeing, powerful entity, like a corporation or a person. White Supremacy, Inc. Look, there's white supremacy. He just went to the grocery store to buy some groceries. Look, he's getting a cup of coffee. But it's like this thing called white supremacy has been around for the past 250, 260 years, and it's just hovering over the United States, waiting for the right moment to hone in on another minority victim. Please don't tell me you buy into this, folks, because it's not true. It's not true. It's garbage, total garbage. And just so you know, SJWs, leftists, whatever you want to call yourselves, liberals, when my relatives came over here from Ireland, Germany, you name it, they came through Ellis Island. And they didn't get any special treatment. They didn't get a free pass. They were screened like everybody else, treated like everybody else. When they came over here, they worked hard to make sure that the future generations of their family would have a better life. And my dad worked 12-hour days as a roofer, a carpenter. He later joined the fire department, ended up having his own carpentry business on the side. Now he's retired. But the point is, he worked hard. And he didn't get where he is because of white supremacy. He wanted to make sure that his children, that I had a better life, that my siblings had a better life. I'm just tired of hearing about white supremacy and how everything is to blame on white supremacy. I'm sick and tired of it. Now we're going to talk about what's going on at the border and what's going on with Oxford University in England. But before I get to that, just before May 2020, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, stopped using the term black supremacy. The reason they did is because of the George Floyd incident. But just before the George Floyd incident, they were using this term black supremacy to describe these far-right or fringe religious groups run by African Americans that believed that they were religiously and racially superior to everybody else. I've got 3 examples here for you. We've got the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, the Nation of Yahweh. They all sound connected, by the way. But they were calling these groups, which are still in existence, they're calling them black supremacists. Southern Poverty Law Center, why have you stopped using the term? These organizations are still around. Now, this issue regarding the border, that's also being blamed on, you guessed it, white supremacy. It's a tragedy. I mean, an absolute disaster what's going on with the border. And this is for those of you in Texas. I love you guys in Texas. Anybody who watches this series who lives in Texas, love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for following the series. Which reminds me, you like the video so far, please click that like button, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram at hashtag Jason Composes, leave comments below, and now you can reach me at Twitter, Voice of the Composer Twitter. But the message I have here is for those of you in Texas. Get on the horn and tell your governor to call President Biden. And tell Biden, you need to get your ass down here and get it down here now and get this problem fixed. Otherwise, we're going to fix it for you. And don't be afraid to do so. Because Texas is your state. And the states in this union are sovereign. They're independent. Yes, we are the United States of America. But we are not the United States. We are the United States, which means each state is independent and sovereign. You have a right, Texas, to defend your state's border. Do it. And don't be afraid to do it. Now, here's what's going on in England. Oxford University. You have these professors who are now claiming, and I love this one. If you follow this series, you know this. I write music in my spare time. Amateur composer. And I bring to light music by lesser known composers. We talk about preserving our history and culture as Americans. So for those of you who are new, welcome. That's what we're all about. But Oxford University, these professors are claiming that sheet music is based on white supremacy. No, you hoity-toity Oxford professors, sheet music is not based on white supremacy. Because guess what? Jimi Hendrix has his songs in print. Florence Price and William Grant Still, two great African-American composers, they have their music in print. The reason why we have sheet music is so that people know how to play an instrument. They know how to read music. And if you're playing a part in an orchestra, in a piece, you know where you're going in the piece. You don't have chaos. This is why we have sheet music. So people can learn how to read music, understand how it works. It's not built on white supremacy. This coming from these privileged, probably mostly white, by the way, white privileged professors at Oxford. Oh, we have something in common, somewhat with the liberals, leftists, SJWs. But seriously, these are the people that are saying that sheet music is built on white supremacy. But you couldn't get into Oxford if you tried. It's an exclusive club. You have to have connections to get into Oxford. And it takes money. Connections and money. That's what it's all about, not about supremacy. So what is the definition of supremacy? According to Merriam-Webster, it's the basic belief that a particular race thinks that it is superior to another. Now, they mention white supremacy here, but that's interchangeable. So the belief that, they say white race, but the belief that any race is inherently superior to other races, that they should have control over other races. Alternatively, it can be the social, economic, and political systems that collectively enable a particular race to maintain power over another. That's the basic definition of white supremacy or supremacy. So yes, you can have black supremacists, Hispanic supremacists, Asian supremacists, as I've mentioned. Now there's a very interesting article going back to 2014 from NPR of all places. And this was published on November 12th. And just before this article was published, the weekend before, there was a clash between KKK members and neo-Nazis, but not over white supremacy, over immigration. Now you can argue that race was a driving factor in that. But the point is that they weren't arguing over who was the better white supremacist or which group should have more power as white supremacist. They were arguing over immigration. And this article here is by Gene Demby, last name D-E-M-B-Y. Title of the article, Why the KKK is Reaching Out Beyond White Folks. And talks about this KKK member who heads up a chapter in Montana named John Abar, last name A-B-A-R-R. And Abar is starting to evolve, as is much of the KKK, moving away from this idea of white supremacy and more towards the idea of fighting against the quote-unquote one world order. And Abar has been quoted as saying, supremacy or white supremacy is the old Klan. This is the new Klan. But at the time, people in Montana, they were questioning his motives, thinking he was trying to advance his political career, maybe so. But they also quote another Klan member, this time from South Carolina. This is what he said. Listen to this. I mean, we can't tell who lives in a house when we leave Klan literature on their doorstep. I guess that's how they get the word out. Whether they're black, white, Mexican, gay, we can't tell that. And if you were to look at somebody's house like that, that means you pretty much are a racist. This coming from a KKK member in South Carolina. So does white supremacy exist? Maybe in a very small pocket of the country, or a few pockets of the country, but the idea that white supremacy is somehow this mysterious, all-knowing, all-seeing being or entity is crazy. It doesn't exist, folks. It doesn't exist. Supremacy is an idea. Just gave you the definition, but it primarily is an idea. And for that idea to take shape, people have got to act on the principles of that idea. That's what makes them a white supremacist, when they embrace those ideals. But white supremacy is not a living, breathing thing. Oh, there goes another white supremacy in the grocery store. Oh, you want to go buy a cup of coffee. Oh, he's buying a car. Now, the article also goes on to talk about this incident in Kansas City, where you had a 73-year-old Klansman who went on a deadly shooting spree, and it was widely condemned by the KKK all over the country. So while you may detest the KKK, and I don't subscribe to the KKK, I've always maintained that the KKK is actually a cult disguised as a fraternity. That's what I believe they are. And if you read some of the literature, it definitely sounds like it. They don't want any outside influence. They want this purely, almost like Puritans. So they want this purely American culture or religion, this utopia that's never going to be. But they did condemn this shooting in 2014. Happened in April. And once again, this article from NPR came out November 12th. Title of the article again, Why the KKK is Reaching Out Beyond White Folks, by Gene Demby. Last name again, D-E-M-B-Y. And then we have to go to present day, talking about what's going on in the Asian community, these attacks on Asians. And there's a very interesting article from Brookings.edu. And this is from the Asian perspective. So it's by Jennifer Lee and Tiffany Hong, last name H-U-A-N-G. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this came out March 11th of this year. Title of the article, Why the Trope of Black-Asian Conflict in the Face of Anti-Asian Violence Dismisses Solidarity. So from the Asian perspective, this tells you why there's this clash between the Black community and the Asian community. And in fact, all these incidences involving Asians are actually happening in these large left-wing run cities, and a lot of them, about 99% of them, are being carried out by African Americans who live in these big cities. It's not being carried out by whites. Now you had the shooting in Atlanta, but even the authorities in Atlanta said that that shooting had nothing to do with white supremacy. Race was not the factor. You had this guy who was sexually frustrated, who was struggling with his own religion. He was a kook, probably a loner. And two of the victims, which they seem to gloss over, I mentioned this in my previous video, but two of the victims were white. The gentleman was, I think he might have been gay. So you got two victims that are white. You've got a male who was one of the victims, of these 8 victims, who is probably possibly gay. So this narrative of white supremacy just falls apart when you actually look at the facts in these cases. Just like with George Floyd. George Floyd had nothing to do with white supremacy. You had an officer who most likely overstepped his bounds from everything that we know. We still have this show trial, as I call it, going on. You know, it's hard to talk when you're doing about a 15-minute video. Your mouth kind of gets dry. But I thought I'd come here and talk about this today because we need to address this head on. White supremacy doesn't exist. It doesn't exist the way that the media is trying to portray it or the left is trying to portray it. As I said before, it is not a person. It is not an entity. It is not a corporation. And I'll say it one last time. If you like the video, please click that like button, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram at #JasonComposes. Leave comments below. Now you can reach me at Twitter, Voice of the Composer at Twitter. Once again, the name of this article from NPR is Why the KKK is Reaching Out Beyond White Folks, published November 12th, 2014. It's by Gene Demby, last name D-E-M-B-Y. And then we have this article here from Brookings.edu. Why the trope of Black-Asian conflict in the face of anti-Asian violence dismisses solidarity. This was published March 11th of this year by Jennifer Lee and Tiffany Hong, last name H-U-A-N-G. So thank you for being with me. I'll catch you next time. Voice of the Composer saying peace out, stay safe, everybody, and God bless this great country.